Christy Wallace has officially decided not to return to the Indiana Fever, leaving a gap in the roster that needs to be filled. With fans buzzing about potential replacements, one name keeps coming up: Ariel Powers. Is she the right fit for Indiana, or should the team explore other options? Let's break it all down, but before further proceeding in video, if you're new to the channel, please support by hit that subscribe button for more updates.
In a stunning yet not so stunning move, Christy Wallace has elected not to come back to the Indiana Fever.
Ariel Powers the perfect fit for the Indiana Fever, or just another risky roster move? With Christy Wallace stepping away, fans are debating who should take her spot. Some believe Powers is the missing piece, while others argue Indiana should explore better options.
News, and I cannot say that it does not seem like the Indiana Fever were not aware of this decision, as Christy Wallace has elected not to come back, and according to a press release, she says this: "This has not been an easy decision for me, but one that I make knowing it is what is in my best interest at this time. I would like to thank the Fever organization for working with me throughout this process, giving me both time and consideration, and for their support of my decision. I look
When Christy Wallace announced her decision to step away from the Indiana Fever for the 2025 season, it sent ripples through the entire fan base. Some had a feeling this might happen, while others were completely caught off guard. Regardless of where people stood, one thing was undeniable: Indiana now had a key spot to fill on their roster, and with that, the debate began. Almost immediately, the name Ariel Powers started circulating, igniting discussions across social media. Fans were quick to advocate for her signing, pointing to her scoring ability, experience, and recent strong performances overseas as proof that she could be a valuable addition. The thought of her suiting up alongside Caitlin Clark, on paper, it sounded like a perfect fit. But as with any potential roster move, there are two sides to the argument. While many believe Powers could be exactly what the Fever need, others aren't so sure. The hesitation isn't about her talent. She's a proven offensive threat. It's about whether she truly fits the team's long-term vision. Indiana has been in full-on rebuild mode for years, working to climb out of the league's basement. Their fortunes started to change in 2023 when they drafted Aaliyah Boston with the number. First overall pick, she wasn't just a great player, she was a franchise cornerstone, a dominant force who immediately began reshaping the team's identity. But as any championship caliber team knows, one star isn't enough. The Fever needed to surround Boston with the right supporting cast, players who could help turn them from a struggling squad into a legitimate contender. That's where Caitlin Clark enters the equation. Her arrival completely shifted the perception of the franchise, bringing an unprecedented level of excitement and national attention. Now, with Wallace stepping away, Indiana faces a crucial decision. Practically overnight, the Indiana Fever transformed from a team on the outskirts of the WNBA conversation to one of the league's most intriguing storylines. But with Christy Wallace stepping away, the discussion isn't just about finding a replacement, it's about shaping a roster that can truly compete alongside Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. That's what makes the debate around Ariel Powers so compelling. Powers is the kind of player who can heat up in an instant. She's a natural scorer, someone who thrives on creating her own shot, slashing to the basket, and knocking down perimeter jumpers when she's in rhythm. If you followed her career with the Washington Mystics or Minnesota Lynx, you've seen firsthand that she can light up the scoreboard. But scoring alone isn't the only factor at play here. The real question is, does she fit within the Fever's vision for the future? Indiana already has a solid group of guards and wings, but more importantly, they're constructing an offensive system centered around movement, spacing, and decision-making, one that plays to Clark's strengths as a facilitator. She isn't the type of player who's going to dribble the air out of the ball, taking defenders one-on-one every possession. Instead, she thrives in a system where teammates are constantly cutting, setting screens, and making quick reads. That's where the potential concern with Powers comes into play. Some argue that Powers would be an excellent addition because of her ability to generate her own offense, which could become crucial once teams inevitably start sending double teams at Clark. The logic is simple. If Clark is swarmed by defenders, having a dynamic scorer like Powers to dump the ball off could ease the pressure and provide a much-needed secondary option. Instead of forcing tough shots, Clark could have another reliable weapon in the arsenal. However, the counter-argument is just as strong. Powers isn't known for thriving off the ball. Her best moments come when she has control, creating her own opportunities rather than relying on a system built around ball movement. That could create some friction in an Indiana offense that wants to flow through Clark's playmaking. If Powers isn't the type of player who excels in a fast-paced, pass-heavy system, then would her presence disrupt the rhythm Indiana is trying to build. And then there's the defensive side of the equation. Winning teams in today's WNBA aren't just about offensive firepower. They're built on defensive versatility and toughness. Look at the reigning champions, the Las Vegas Aces. They have Aja Wilson protecting the paint, Chelsea Gray setting the tone defensively on the perimeter, and a team-wide commitment to making life miserable for opposing offenses. That's what separates elite teams from those that are merely good. For all the excitement surrounding Clark's arrival, the Fever still have glaring defensive issues. Aaliyah Boston is a dominant presence inside, but Indiana struggles against teams with size and physicality. They need defenders who can switch across multiple positions, lock down scorers, and bring an edge on that end of the floor. That raises the ultimate question. Is Powers the missing piece Indiana needs, or would they be better off targeting a player who strengthens them in areas where they need help the most? While Ariel Powers brings solid defensive skills, she isn't exactly a game changer on that end of the floor. That's why some fans believe the Indiana Fever should take a different approach when filling Christy Wallace's spot. Wallace may not have been a star, but she played with grit, hustle, and strong defensive instincts, qualities that aren't necessarily Powers' biggest strengths. If Indiana is looking for a true replacement for Wallace's impact, Powers isn't a perfect one-to-one swap, which raises a bigger question. Is she the right investment for this team? Financially, the decision is even more complex. With Wallace stepping away, the Fever freed up around $80,000 in cap space. While that might seem like a significant amount, WNBA salary constraints make every dollar count. Powers, having previously earned around $155,000 per year with the Minnesota Lynx, likely isn't looking to take a major pay cut. If Indiana decides to bring her in, they'll have to carefully weigh whether she's truly worth that price tag, especially when there are other pressing roster needs. Instead of focusing solely on offensive firepower, some fans believe the Fever should invest in younger talent, a defensive-minded wing, or even a true backup center, someone who can help them match up against taller, more dominant teams. At the moment, Indiana lacks size and interior depth, and if they're serious about building a championship-caliber team, balance is key. That being said, Powers still offers undeniable value. She's a proven scorer with experience, and she plays with a chip on her shoulder, thriving in situations where she feels overlooked. Beyond her on-court abilities, she has built a genuine connection with fans, regularly engaging on social media and embracing the energy of the community. That level of interaction is rare in sports, and it's one of the reasons so many Fever supporters are rallying behind her as a potential addition. She's not just aware of the conversation, she's actively participating in it, which makes the situation even more compelling. At this point, the Indiana Fever find themselves at a critical crossroads. The decision they make now could have lasting implications for their future. If their priority is adding instant offense and veteran leadership, then signing Ariel Powers makes a lot of sense. She brings scoring depth, experience, and a competitive edge. However, if the team is thinking strategically about long-term roster construction, defensive needs, and overall balance, then they may need to take a different route. That's what makes this situation so compelling. There's no easy or obvious answer. What we do know is that the Fever are in a rare and pivotal position. With Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston as their foundation, they have the potential to build something special. But in the WNBA, talent alone isn't enough. It's about assembling the right pieces to create a championship caliber team. Every decision from this point forward will shape the franchise's trajectory. So the real question is, does Ariel Powers fit into that vision? That's what we're all waiting to find out. Now that we've broken down the immediate impact of Christy Wallace's departure and the possibility of adding Powers, it's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about filling a single roster spot, it's about defining Indiana's long-term strategy. The Fever haven't been serious title contenders in years, spending season after season in rebuild mode, making roster changes, and searching for the right combination of players. But now, with Clark in the mix, everything changes. If we really want to understand what Indiana must do next, we need to study the blueprint of championship teams. The most successful franchises in recent WNBA history didn't just rely on star power, they built balanced, well-structured rosters with a clear identity. Looking at teams that have won titles in recent years provides valuable insight into what it truly takes to compete at the highest level. The question for Indiana is not just whether Powers is the right move, but whether she fits into the larger vision of what they are trying to build. The Las Vegas Aces are the perfect example of how to build a WNBA powerhouse. They didn't just wake wake up one day and become champions. It took years of smart roster moves, key free agent signings, and a clear vision of the kind of team they wanted to be. At the heart of it all is Aja Wilson, a dominant force who sets the tone on both ends of the floor. But what truly makes the Aces great isn't just Wilson, it's the way the team is built around her. They went out and got Chelsea Gray, one of the best point guards in the league, whose leadership and ability to take over games in crucial moments make her invaluable. They added Kelsey Plum, a lethal scorer who spaces the floor and creates opportunities for everyone around her. They built a roster with size, defensive grit, and depth at every position. That's what separates a good team from a championship team. It's not just about having talent, it's about putting together the right mix of players who fit together and make each other better. Now, let's look at the Indiana Fever. They have Aaliyah Boston, their version of Aja Wilson, a young, dominant post player who can control the paint and be a defensive anchor. They also have Caitlin Clark, a superstar in the making who combines the scoring ability of Kelsey Plum with the playmaking instincts of Chelsea Gray. But beyond those two, the Fever's roster is still a work in progress. This is where Indiana's front office has to make some big decisions. What kind of team are they trying to build? Do they want to be an up-tempo, high-scoring team that overwhelms opponents with offense? Do they want to focus on defense, making sure they can shut teams down and win gritty games? Should they prioritize veteran leadership, or would it be better to develop young players who can grow alongside Clark and Boston? These are the questions that will define their future. That brings us to Ariel Powers. On the surface, she's an appealing option. She's a proven scorer, someone who can step in and provide an immediate offensive boost. But is she the best possible fit for what the Fever need right now? There are still plenty of options available, including other free agents, international players, and upcoming draft prospects. Maybe what the Fever really need is a bigger wing, someone who can add size and defensive versatility. Maybe they need a lockdown defender who can take pressure off Clark and Boston on that end of the floor. There's also the issue of money. If Indiana commits to Powers now, that limits their ability to make moves later. What if a better player becomes available in free agency in a few months? What if a trade opportunity comes along that could help Indiana take a bigger step forward? WNBA teams have to think ahead, not just about this season, but about next year and beyond. Then there's the question of how Powers would fit alongside Caitlin Clark. Clark is a player who thrives when she has space to create. She can score at will, find open teammates, and run an offense at an elite level. The Fever need to surround her with players who complement her game, not ones who might take away touches or disrupt the flow of the offense. The right additions to this roster could accelerate Indiana's path to being a serious contender. The wrong ones could slow them down. At the end of the day, the Fever are at a critical moment in their rebuild. With Clark and Boston as their foundation, they have a rare opportunity to build something special, but every move they make from this point forward matters. Caitlin Clark is a masterful passer and playmaker, excelling when surrounded by high IQ teammates who can space the floor, move without the ball, and capitalize on open looks. Her success thrives in an offensive system built on fluid ball movement and smart decision making. Ariel Powers, on the other hand, has built her career as a high usage player, someone who thrives with the ball in her hands, creating her own shots rather than operating within a structured system. This raises an important question. Would Powers be able to adjust her style of play to fit seamlessly into an offense designed around Clark's strengths? Could she embrace a more off-ball role, take fewer shots, and prioritize spacing and defense instead? Some players successfully adapt to new roles, while others struggle when asked to change their game. For the Fever, team chemistry is just as important as individual talent. If they were to bring in Powers, she would need to fully buy into Indiana's system to avoid disrupting the balance they are trying to build. But beyond just scoring, the Fever have a more pressing need: size and defensive depth in the front court. Aaliyah Boston is already a dominant presence in the paint, but she can't do it all alone. Indiana has struggled against taller, more physical teams, particularly when facing opponents like the New York Liberty, who boast stars such as Brianna Stewart and Jonquel Jones. Without enough size to properly match up, the Fever's interior defense remains vulnerable. This is why many fans remain skeptical about signing Powers. Another 6-foot wing with scoring ability may not be what Indiana truly needs. Instead, many believe their priority should be securing a legitimate backup center, someone who can protect the rim, crash the boards, and relieve some of the pressure on Boston in the paint. Another option option for Indiana is patience. Rather than rushing to sign Powers immediately, they could hold onto their cap space, assess how the team performs in the early part of the season, and make a more strategic move down the line. If they start strong but realize they need a defensive anchor or another veteran leader, they would still have the flexibility to explore trades or sign a free agent who better fits their long-term vision. Committing to Powers too quickly might limit their ability to address bigger needs later. At this point, no one can say for certain what the Fever's front office will decide. The debate over Powers is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. What remains clear is that Indiana is at a crucial turning point, and every move they make from here will determine whether they are truly on the path to becoming a championship contender. The fans have spoken loud and clear. They want Ariel Powers in a Fever jersey. But while the excitement is understandable, the front office has to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Their job isn't just to make a popular move, it's to make the right move. If they truly believe Powers is the missing piece, she could be suiting up for Indiana soon. But if they're focused on long-term success, they may decide to go in a different direction. One thing is certain, the Indiana Fever are at a crucial turning point. They finally have the star power with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, but assembling a championship caliber team takes more than just big names. It requires smart, strategic roster moves. The discussion around Ariel Powers is about more than just one player. It highlights the larger challenge Indiana faces. They can't afford to make impulsive decisions. Every addition to the team needs to complement Clark's playmaking and maximize Boston's presence in the paint. Right now, everything is uncertain and all eyes are on Indiana's next move. Will Powers be the answer to their depth concerns, or should the Fever focus on size and defense instead? That's the big question, and we're all waiting to see what happens next. Whether or not the Fever sign Ariel Powers, this decision will shape their future. Should they prioritize scoring, defense, or a long-term roster strategy? The front office has a big choice ahead. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Until next time, stay locked in.